Mouthwashing is a short psychological horror game that might have been better off as a psychological drama because honestly its weakest points are its dedicated horror segment. The game drops us right into it, with the ship's computer asking that we course correct so we don't crash into some unidentified space object. But don't worry, 1.4 degrees to the left and we'll be all... Why are we turning right? The computer does the smart thing, locks the controls, goes into autopilot, and docks the whole crew 4,000 credits for our dyslexia. That seems like a lot. Maybe we can earn it back by overriding the autopilot and doing it manual... nope. Never mind. Wandering out of the cockpit, we quickly realize there's something a bit, off with our POV character. The corridors turn into an endless maze. The company's mascot, a cartoon pony named Polly, and the motivational posters starring him begin to appear all over. The audio distorts and the crying of a baby can be heard. Then we get jump scared. From here, the game jumps back and forth from before the crash to after the crash. We start 2 months after the crash. The ship, Tolpar, is a long-haul space freighter with only 5 crew members. Curly, the captain, Jimmy, the co-pilot, Anya, the nurse, Swansea, the mechanic, and Daisuke, an interning mechanic. Taking the POV of Jimmy, the group argue about whether they should break into cargo for supplies. Well, I say they, but it's only Swansea that's against it. Only the captain can access the cargo, but he's a little, he can't. And really, they don't need him but this glorified Maglite. Despite it being 2 months after the crash, no one has gone into the cockpit because that thing is just laying on the floor in there. Flashback to 7 days before the crash. Anya is performing the mandatory psyche evals. Captain Curly has passed, leaving only Jimmy. Anya complains that Jimmy is uncooperative and gives spoof answers like being sexually attracted to cartoon horses, which is a shot at the company mascot and not My Little Pony. Probably. Since Curly's been friends with Jimmy for years, he decides to do the eval for her. But before Curly can pry more juicy details about Jimmy's toon pony fetish, he has to solve a teeny problem with Daisuke, who's gotten himself stuck in emergency foam. No problem, no problem. A few swings of a utility axe and it'll all be good. Don't move, bud. Know what is a problem, though? How shitty the psych eval is. While heading to the cockpit, Curly has severe visual and auditory hallucinations, and severe is putting it mildly. And here is where I have a little nitpick. The hallucination that Curly has is loaded with symbolism, right? Standing on the edge, looking at a fall so long that you can't see the bottom, an ocean of blood and a sky of stars, but no defining features, aimlessness, directionlessness, ladders spring up from the depths, flashing warning signs and blaring alarms. We can put all these little pieces together to get an never mind, the next scene just lays it out for you explicitly, even having Jimmy ask why it seems like Curly is standing on the edge, and they even use the ladder metaphor again. I have another nitpick, but we'll need more context, so I'll just say that not only is the symbolism about as subtle as a brick to the face, it's redundant when the follow-up scene just tells you. Sure, I guess it could be reinforcement, but usually those things don't immediately precede each other. After the eval and the aforementioned conversation about careers in the future, a message from the head honchos gets faxed in. Pony Express is going the way of the dodo, so they're all fired. What a bummer. They still have months to go on this trip, and all they have to think about now is how they're unemployed and they can't even start a job search until they get back. Curly heads to the lounge to break the news and finds a surprise party waiting for him. See, Pony Express was such a cheapskate that the crew have to celebrate birthdays communally. This has transformed into a tradition of picking a crew member and throwing them a surprise party instead. Curly plays along, makes the cake, and then drops the devastating news. Jimmy goes ballistic, blaming and accusing Curly. Flash forward. The crew has successfully broken into the cargo only to discover that they have been hauling mouthwash. Shocking revelation, I know. It's too sugary to even be used as a disinfectant, but Swansea's interested in it for other reasons. Glug glug. Now, 3 months after the crash, Jimmy wakes up to Curly screaming in pain and Anya nowhere to be found. He tracks her down to the cockpit where she's talking to Swansea. They break off their conversation, but Jimmy notes that Anya is crying. He gets the answer he came for. Curly hasn't had his painkillers yet, so Jimmy has the honors of shoving some down his throat. Daisuke has made himself sick from drinking the mouthwash. He tells Jimmy that it was his mom who got him the internship, and he hopes she doesn't blame herself. Anya tells Jimmy about another medical cabinet, but will need to get the axe from Swansea to get to it. Jimmy does so at the cost of the big screen in the lounge and breaks through the foam. For the third time, Jimmy gives Curly the painkillers instead of Anya, who gets nauseous from the sounds that he makes during, which... yeah, Jimmy snaps at Anya about how he's actually trying to fix things, to get the crew through it, and take responsibility because he's the captain now. Anya tries to take it back, but Jimmy sends her off to look after Daisuke. Flashback to 2 days before the crash. Anya and Curly both can't sleep and talk together in the lounge. Anya asks how many days of transport there are left and is told just under 8 months. Then she asks, why is there a lock in the medroom, but not the sleeping quarters? Curly supposes it must be the same reason why there's one on the cockpit. Safety! 4 months after the crash. In a panic, Daisuke tells Jimmy that the medroom door is stuck, trapping Anya and Curly inside. But it quickly becomes apparent that Anya has locked herself inside. She says Jimmy was right all along and she should have done it sooner and that she'll take care of it. Afraid that Anya is going to harm Curly, Jimmy and Daisuke decide they need to use the broken vent which connects the medroom to utility, the same one that Daisuke was fiddling around in when he got stuck in emergency foam and had to be axed out by Curly. But there's a few problems. Swansea said that utility was completely foamed up, and because he didn't want anyone trying to break through the foam and potentially break the seal, he keeps it locked. But not only that, he's also camping out in front of it. Jimmy decides the best course of action would be to give Swansea a spiked cocktail to knock him out. So they toss together some isopropyl alcohol and mouthwash. Swansea passes out from drinking the nightmare cocktail, and Daisuke, rightly so, panics about whether he's going to be okay and starts having second thoughts. Utility, it turns out, is in great shape. Foam covers all but one cryostasis pod, which leads Jimmy to the conclusion that there was never any foam. Swansea lied and was going to use the pod for himself. Daisuke thinks maybe they should just chill, take a breath, and talk to Swansea when he wakes up. And while that's probably the right thing to do, there's the whole Anya taking care of it thing. So Daisuke crawls into the vent, he screams, and then we hear him ask, Anya, what did you do? Flashback to the day before the crash. It's not clear how he learned it went missing. Maybe it was on display somewhere, but the load gun issued to the captain in case of unrest among the crew has gone poof. In a panic, Curly tracks Anya down to the cockpit. He realizes that as the nurse, Anya never got any psych evaluations. They're useless anyway. But if she was stressed, he'd figure something out to help her. She doesn't need to hurt herself. Anya points out it would be kinda hard, seeing as how Curly is the only one who can unlock the case that it's in, and she wasn't going to anyway, but she hid the whole case. She reveals that she's pregnant, and though it takes a little prodding from Anya, Curly quickly pieces together that the father must be Jimmy, and it wasn't consensual. We're taking a little leap here. It's now the day of the crash. Curly finds Anya in her office, and she says she told Jimmy, but he didn't say anything that makes a difference. Curly finds Jimmy outside the cockpit. Jimmy basically just whines about how everything they worked for is ruined now. He says they worked for, because nobody's gonna let the great Captain Curly live down that one of his crew attacked another member of his crew. Or, you know, totally hypothetically, if the Tulpar were to just vanish and no one survives to tell the tale, then they get to keep their reputation at least. He pats Curly on the arm and says he'll take care of it. After the events at the opening, Curly rushes to the cockpit to try and correct their course, but it's too late, and Tulpar collides with the unidentified space object. It wasn't Curly who crashed the ship, but Jimmy, in the most genius attempt to cover up how big a pile of scum that he is. Flashback to the present. Daisuke made it through the vent and unlocked the door, but at a cost. Namely, large quantities of blood. Curly appears to be wearing all of the bandaging on the ship, and they used the isopropyl alcohol to make the spiked cocktail. They split up to see if they can find anything else. And this is when the player discovers what Anya did. She took the remaining painkillers, dying beside Curly, who is still breathing, and just... Man, a bad day doesn't even describe 1% of his life since that crash. After a minor, wee hallucination involving jump scare, red light, green light with a freaky horse monster, Jimmy comes to the conclusion that, hey, mouthwash kills germs, right? Forget that Anya already said it had too much sugar to be used as a disinfectant. Unsurprisingly, it does them no good. Swansea laments that Daisuke was a good kid trying his best, then axes him in the face to put him out of his misery. Jimmy confronts Swansea about the working cryopod, insisting that Swansea has essentially been working against the crew by telling Anya who knows what, and killing Daisuke? Because, yeah, I mean, the whole him bleeding out thing is Jimmy's fault, but he could have totally fixed it. Somehow. I want to pop back to my nitpick about the hallucination earlier. We have the context. Jimmy wrecked the ship, and he also has hallucinations, which is also my nitpick. Both Jimmy and Curly have the same hallucinations. Not the content, just the essence. And it just feels meh, like a hokey way to layer in symbolism. On a positive note, the writers are certainly capable of subtlety. They must just like whiplash. For example, Anya never says, Jimmy assaulted me, Jimmy is the father of my baby. But instead, you get the implication from an out-of-the-blue question she asks Curly. Why are there locks on medical, but not the sleeping quarters? Getting just a touch ahead of the scene that we're in, Swansea never says, there's a working cryopod, and I want to give it to Daisuke. But based on his conversation with Anya in the cockpit and him telling Jimmy he can have it for all he cares, it's heavily implied that he did, indeed, want to give it to Daisuke after he could be certain that nobody would sabotage it. And then you get, like a brick to the face level of subtlety, like the repeated take responsibility message popping on screen, or how cartoonishly bad Pony Express is. Anyway, remember that missing gun? Well, Jimmy finds it in the drawer of Curly's medical bed. Now, I'm not sure whether this is a hallucination or not. I think given how dismissive he was toward Jimmy just before and how Swansea is tied to a chair in utility, that Jimmy has a delusion that Swansea wants to kill him. He hallucinates that Swansea chases him through the ship with the axe, and then he has an even more severe hallucination of him being chased through a cemetery. This is a glorified reflex minigame that felt really unnecessary. Afterwards, Jimmy envisions post-crash Curly sitting in a chair on fire? He says he's taking responsibility and that he's sorry, but he isn't. Not really. Sure, he's sorry about what happened to Curly, but he never addresses what he did to Anya, never expresses guilt or anything for what he did to her, or even acknowledge Daisuke and Swansea, let alone how they suffered because he's the worst living thing in space. We get the horrifying reveal that one of the delusions wasn't entirely. Jimmy really did cut off a piece of Curly's leg and ate it. He plucks Curly from the table, plops him in the cryostasis pod, turns it on, and then turns his life off. This ending is actually a great example of where the true horror in mouthwashing comes from. Think about Curly for a minute. Apart from an undiagnosed mental problem, and I'm not a psych nurse, but hallucinations that vivid seem not good? You're well respected, you do good at your, and let's be real here, nightmare of a job. Seriously, trapped in a ship in the endless void of space with only 4 other people as company and no sources of entertainment for over a year? And then your friend, who you may have gotten the job for, sexually assaults one of your crew, and then he crashes the ship to try and cover his ass. You try to correct the course, but it's too late. In a few minutes, your life goes south hard. You're a quadruple amputee, unable to speak, covered head to toe in 3rd-degree burns. Even taking the pills to numb the horrible pain hurts. You can't do anything. Your friend blamed you for the crash, and you can't even say a thing in your own defense. You can only lay there knowing that your ship is drifting through space. The trip was supposed to be 382 days. Unless there's regular check-ins, nobody will even begin a search for you until the delivery is late. And the supplies, the food, the pills, even the air that you breathe won't last that long. Who knows how far you were knocked off course, or how far you'll have drifted by the time somebody comes looking. Being unable to move and speak must be horrible for your mental condition. You can't distract yourself, you're stuck in your own head, haunted by hallucinations that are probably much, much worse than they were before. You can do nothing as Anya takes her own life by your bedside, only wish that you could fix it and make everything better. You can do nothing as you hear Daisuke screaming in pain, coming out of the vent covered in blood, his eyes wide with terror as he sees Anya. You can do nothing when Jimmy takes the gun from the drawer under your bed but squirm, laugh, cry. You can do nothing when Jimmy takes you to utility and plops you inside a cryopod. You can only watch as it begins to freeze, only listen to the gunshot. 20 more years worth of chances that someone finds your ship and the skeletal remains of your crew. 20 more years worth of chances to return to a life of agony. Maybe prosthetics in this time period are advanced, and with years of slow rehabilitation, you can walk and use your hands just as good as before. Maybe there's some advanced medical treatment for the severe whole body burns that you've suffered, and you could live without that horrific pain, but you'll never be the same Curly again. Not after Tulpar. And that's just Curly. Imagine being Anya, being not only trapped with her rapist, but having to take orders from him, fawn around him to try and keep the peace, all while being demeaned left and right, which, by the way, Jimmy is a huge idiot, in addition to the laundry list of problems that he has. Anya kept Curly alive for months with bare minimum supplies and medicine, and I don't see her get credit for this, but she must have been giving Curly the painkillers for the time before the game begins. Jimmy doesn't act like he's been doing it for months. No, he loses his shit after having to do it 3 times. But yeah, Jimmy, you're really Curly's hero. Anyway, tell me that's not more horrifying than jump scare red light, green light, or this reflex test boss fight, or the loudest maze minigame. None of this is to say that mouthwashing is bad. It's definitely worth experiencing once, though it has no replayability, so maybe pick it up on sale if you'd rather play it than watch Let's Play. If you're up for more, then check this video out. See you there!